So you hear the word audit, and you think, okay, someone's checking the books. But have you ever stopped to ask, who audits the auditors? Who's checking their work? Well, that's exactly what we're getting into today. It's all about quality control, and believe me, it's the absolute bedrock of trust in our entire financial system.
Just picture this for a second. You're an auditor. You signed off on a report, and then you see it, to your absolute horror. The report says profit, but the real financial statements show a loss, a massive public mistake. In a flash, a company's credibility is shot, and yeah, your career is probably flashing before your eyes.
And look, this isn't some made-up nightmare scenario. This is what actually happens when quality control completely breaks down. It's a total system failure. And it's precisely why having a solid quality control system isn't just about, ticking boxes and filling out forms. It's a critical safety net. So let's put a face to this nightmare, right? Our story today comes from a case study about a chartered accountant, an auditor named Jagriti. So meet Jagriti. She's working at this audit firm that's growing like crazy, maybe a little too crazy. See, they're taking on all these new, really complex clients, but the firm doesn't really have the right experience for them. And it starts to feel like making money is becoming way more important than doing good work. That's when she spots it. Not just little typos, I'm talking about huge, serious errors in audit reports that have already been published.
So what does she do? Well, she does something pretty brave. She actually confronts her senior partner. She warns him, point blank, that the firm is, and I'm quoting here, inviting troubles from regulators. And her story really sets up the big question for us, doesn't it? How on earth do you stop something like this from happening in the first place?
Well, the answer is something that should have been the #1 priority at our firm all along. It's a little thing called audit quality.
Okay, so what does that even mean, audit quality? It's not just about crunching numbers and making sure they add up. No, it's about having a really solid, rigorous process in place with tight quality controls to make sure every single audit follows all the laws and professional standards. That system is what lets everyone, investors, the government, you and me, actually trust the financial information we're seeing. And this isn't just some vague, fluffy concept. It's a real, formal framework. To make sure quality happens, there are actually 2 key levels of control that we need to talk about. This whole system is basically governed by 2 really important standards, SQC1 and SA220. Just remember those names. They work together to make sure quality is baked in from the very top all the way down to a specific project. Okay, here's a super simple way to think about it. SQC1, that's the firm's rulebook. It applies to the entire company and everything it does. It's the big picture safety system. Then you have SA220. That's more like the project checklist. It's for one specific individual audit. It's the checklist for that single job. You gotta have both, right? The overall rules and the specific checks. All right, so let's dig into that first level, the big one, SQC1, the firm's rulebook. Because honestly, this is the foundation for everything. And the first thing you need to know is that this stuff starts at the top. Quality control isn't something you just hand off to the new hires. The standards are super clear about this. The firm's leadership, the CEO, the managing partners, they are the ones responsible. They have to build a culture where quality is non-negotiable. I mean, listen to this quote from the standard itself. It says the firm's business strategy is always subject to the overriding requirement for the firm to achieve quality. It goes on to say that commercial considerations do not override the quality of work performed. It couldn't be clearer. And this, right here, is exactly where Jagriti's firm was going off the rails. Okay, next up, another huge piece of this firm-wide rulebook is ethics. And the big one, the one that matters most, is independence. Think about it. An auditor has to be objective, and you just can't be objective if you're not truly independent from the client you're auditing.
The rules even point out specific dangers to independence, and one of the biggest ones is called the familiarity threat. It's just human nature, right? If you're auditing the same company for 5, 6, 7 years, you get to know the people. You might become friends, and maybe, just maybe, you get a little too sympathetic, a little too comfortable, and you start accepting their explanations without digging as deep.
So that's a real problem, isn't it? How do you stop auditors from getting too comfortable with a client? If it's just human nature, how can a system actually prevent it?
Well, there's a very clear rule for this. 7 years, that's the magic number. For audits of listed companies, the main partner in charge of that audit has to be rotated out after a maximum of 7 years, period. It forces a change, brings in a fresh pair of eyes, and breaks that familiarity cycle before it gets too risky.
All right, and the last piece of the firm's rulebook we'll look at is maybe one of the most important, and it happens before a single number is even checked. It's all about how a firm chooses its clients.
So, should an audit firm just take on any client who walks in the door with a check? This goes right back to the problem at Jagreedi's firm, right? They were just grabbing new business left and right. But the rules are clear. Sometimes the most important part of quality control is knowing when to say no thanks.
So before a firm even thinks about signing a contract, they have to do some serious homework. They have to ask, what's the integrity and reputation of this potential client? What are their business practices like? Are they looking for a real, tough audit, or do they just want someone to rubber stamp some shady accounting? And critically, the firm has to look in the mirror and ask, are we even competent enough to do this job right?
Okay, so we've been deep in the weeds with all these rules and standards. Let's pull back for a second and talk about why this all matters so much. Look, these rules aren't just some boring bureaucracy for accountants to worry about. They are the absolute bedrock of trust. They're what allows an investor to put their money into a company, what allows employees to feel secure, and what lets the public believe that the system isn't totally rigged. It's all about trust.
At the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. You know, an audit gives you a report full of data, but it's this invisible system of quality control that takes all that dry data and turns it into the most valuable commodity there is: trust.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. Is quality just a checklist, or is it something more? Is it a culture? Because as we saw with Jagreedi, you can have all the rules in the world written down on paper, but if you don't have a culture of integrity that puts quality first, well, then those rules might not be worth much at all.